My daughter-in-law is not family, so she's in the way."
With those words echoing, the car drove off, leaving me behind. Lost in unfamiliar mountains, on unknown terrain. I felt utterly bewildered. And Mason's funeral is about to start. A few days earlier, upon hearing the grave news about Mason, my husband and I rushed to his family's home. Everyone had been prepared for Mason's passing since he had been in the hospital for some time. Rather than a sense of sorrow, it felt more like relief that Mason was finally free from pain. However, the funeral preparations were quite a challenge. My husband's family home, situated in the mountains, is the main branch of the family. They used to own vast lands in the past. Although the family's fortune was squandered by the grandfather's generation, their pride as the main family remained. During occasions like Christmas or family gatherings, many relatives would come, and I was always roped in to help. Given that Mason was the head of such a family, his funeral had to be grand. Sue, my mother-in-law, Wyatt, my husband, and Grace, his sister, were all in a frenzy.
Our family is the main branch. The funeral has to be grander than for Mason's younger brother. Right, we're expecting about 100 attendees. Maybe I should get a new pearl necklace for the occasion.
While everyone voiced their own opinions, I, the daughter-in-law, was left to handle all the preparations.
Austin, ensure you discuss everything properly with the funeral home. You know it best. Please make sure to choose the best altar and coffin. The catering after the viewing should be from that fancy restaurant. Their steak is delicious.
Truth be told, due to family circumstances, I had worked at a funeral home before getting married. This seemed to be another reason the in-laws looked down upon me. I certainly know the ins and outs of funeral preparations, so I don't mind handling them. But it's frustrating that they push all the planning and communication with the relatives onto me, yet never miss an opportunity to voice their opinions. It's the worst.
Upgrading the altar will cost an additional $1,200, and the coffin is $400 more. Is that okay? It's the daughter-in-law's duty to manage such things. Typically, the deceased's favorite dishes are served during the viewing. If the dishes look cheap, it'll be embarrassing. Just do as you're told. With the gifts from all the attendees, we'll manage.
Reluctantly, I went ahead with the preparations to ensure a grand funeral to their satisfaction. Then came the day of the funeral. 4 of us got into the car my husband was driving from the in-laws' house. However, as we approached the mountain path, the car suddenly halted.
Look, those wild lilies over there were Dad's favorites. Austin, could you pick some for us?
Huh? Where exactly?
Right there in the woods. Quickly go grab some.
Though I couldn't see the flowers from inside the car, I thought I might spot them up close, so I stepped out. Just then,
Mason had everything thought out and arranged for us.
No sooner had Sue spoken than the car sped off. I stood there, completely taken aback, watching it disappear. My name's Austin, and I'm 42. In reality, due to personal reasons, I had dropped out of school and worked at a funeral home until I got married. I didn't dislike the job, but the erratic hours and scarce days off wore me out. It was around that time I met Wyatt, introduced by a friend. Wyatt was 6 years older than me and seemed very dependable. He told me it was okay if I wanted to quit my job, and that led us to get married. In hindsight, it might have been a way for me to escape my situation. Nevertheless, we've been married for 20 years now. Although we haven't had children, I believe we've managed fairly well with my kind-hearted husband. Well, except for the dealings with his family. His family was all about pride, being the main branch, and showing off. Whenever there was a family gathering or Christmas, they'd go all out with a feast to welcome the relatives. And all of that preparation fell on my shoulders. Neither Sue nor Grace, who lives with them, would lift a finger to help. They'd just sit and critique. I told my husband multiple times I didn't want to visit them. At our home, he helps with chores, but at his family's, he feels free of responsibilities, so he never refuses to go. On top of that, he'd act all macho only when we're at his family's place, like he's whipped. However, every time we returned home, he'd apologize profusely and try to make it up to me. Eventually, for the sake of our marriage, I decided to endure these visits, but only twice a year. But I never expected they'd dump the entire preparation for Mason's funeral on me.
Look, Austin, you've got to handle all of Dad's funeral. What are you saying? I can help, but it's not all on me. Why not? You worked at a funeral home, right? You know everything about it. We have no clue about funerals. Please handle it.
I reluctantly agreed, but that's when the nightmare began.
The funeral home the hospital recommended has a bad reputation. Austin, can you find a better one? That funeral venue looked old, didn't it? Change it to a nicer one. White chrysanthemums are so gloomy. Pick something more vibrant.
Every decision I made with the funeral director was criticized, forcing me to redo the arrangements repeatedly. In between, I had to contact all the relatives, arrange taxis for the elderly, and handle the return gifts. There was an endless list of tasks.
Austin, I'm hungry. Can you hurry with the food? Anticipate our needs without us having to ask.
Instead of grabbing a sandwich from the convenience store, they demanded meals from me.
I'm swamped with funeral preparations. Wyatt, tell them to sort out their own meals.
I finally asked my husband, but with the confidence from being home, he frowned at my request.
But you're the wife, you should handle meals. Excuse me?
Frustrated by his attitude and lack of support, I served them simple pasta.
Wow, that's lazy. If you're serving pasta, you should add snacks. Yeah, Mom's right.
Facing their unreasonable demands during Mason's funeral preparations, I realized arguing was a waste. I just did as told.
I hope you're arranging the funeral as we instructed. The altar and coffin are top of the line. I've finished contacting all the relatives and the return gifts are ready. No issues. There better not be any mistakes. Stop talking down to me, especially when you dump everything on me.
After the viewing, my husband's attitude infuriated me, leading to a heated exchange.
Mason appreciated me. He even called me before his death, thanking me for putting up with all your unreasonable demands.
In my husband's family, only Mason treated me with kindness. Before he passed, he called just for me, saying, "Thank you for all you've done. I'm sorry for the unreasonable demands everyone constantly makes.
Anyway, you know funeral preparations better. Just get it done." Is everything financially sound? After all, you've been demanding top-notch everything without checking prices. Just do what you're told. If you keep arguing, we might as well divorce.
Taken aback by the sudden mention of divorce, I asked,
"Are you serious?" "Absolutely. My mom always said I should have married someone better." "Excuse me?" My cousin, who recently got divorced and came back to the family, is stunningly beautiful. She even won a university beauty contest.
Wyatt told me.
At the viewing, my aunt kept pestering me about marrying her after divorcing you, Austin.
During the post-viewing dinner, while I was swamped serving tea and cleaning up, Wyatt just sat there, sipping beer and chatting with relatives. I couldn't believe that was the topic of their conversation. As I fumed in silence, Wyatt's confidence grew. I kept telling myself to hold on just one more day, until the funeral was over. The next day, we were on our way to the funeral in a car driven by my husband. But, as we reached the mountain path, Sue demanded I pick lilies for Mason, and they left me stranded there. Usually, my husband wouldn't pull a stunt like this. But there he was, smirking at me from the speeding car. He probably had that beautiful cousin he mentioned yesterday on his mind.
At this point, whatever. I've done all I could for the funeral. The funeral service will handle the rest.
Although being left was quite shocking, there was a slight relief in knowing I didn't have to oblige to the family's every whim anymore. My real issue now? How to navigate this mountain path in my funeral attire and heels.
How am I supposed to make my way through this?
Exasperated, I sat down by the road. That's when a car stopped in front of me. Hours passed, and the funeral was nearing its end.
Hey, where the hell is Austin?
I received a frantic call from my husband.
What's this about an $800,000 funeral bill? You better get here now.
I could hear Sue, her voice almost a shriek, in the background.
Serves you right.
I had to stifle my laughter hearing their predictable reaction.
What's going on? There's no way we can afford an $800,000 funeral. Wasn't the plan for the gifts from the attendees to cover the funeral costs? The expected money didn't come through. Plus, only half the expected guests showed up. Well, that figures. Gift amounts for funerals in this area range from $30 to $50. For close relatives like parents or siblings, gifts could range from $100 to even $1,000. But knowing how stingy some of our relatives can be, they'd probably give around $30 each. If 100 people each gave $30, that would only total $3,000. Furthermore, many of our relatives are elderly, and a good number of them wouldn't be able to attend the funeral. You should have seen this coming. Why didn't you tell us? I did, several times. But you all insisted on the most expensive options. As my husband was at a loss for words, Sue jumped in. Just get back here now. They planned to charge $300,000 if you were here, but without you, they're saying it's $800,000. What's going on? About that. When Sue told me to find a better funeral home, I was at my wit's end. So, I reached out to the president of the funeral company I used to work at. He introduced me to a funeral home near our family home and, because of his influence, they agreed to do it at a much lower price. I had arranged a special price since I was involved, but since I'm not there, it can't be helped. Well then, you just need to come over now. Please, just do something about it. Well, I could come, but as I talked on the phone, I revealed myself to them. What? You're here? Actually, when I was lost on that mountain road, the car that stopped was driven by the person in charge from the funeral company. We had met several times to discuss plans, and he was quite shocked to see me sitting on the roadside. Once I explained the situation, he kindly drove me to the funeral hall. I wanted to pay my respects to Mason, so I asked him to bring me here. But I didn't want to be around all of you, so I stayed hidden. So, you were here after all. We can reduce the funeral costs now. My husband and Sue were practically dancing with joy. That won't be happening. Why? Because, according to you, I'm not a part of the family. Oh, come on. That was just a slip of the tongue. You're overreacting. You're my wife. I'm not anymore. What do you mean? You said you wanted a divorce, remember? You can go ahead and marry that beautiful, well-educated cousin of yours.
Look, Before he could finish, Grace, who had been watching from nearby, lunged at me.
Enough of your nonsense! Since you're here, we can get the funeral cost down to $300,000, right?
No, I won't. And even if it's reduced, how do you plan on paying?
We'll just withdraw it from my dad's bank account. He once mentioned he had about that much.
That's not possible.
Why not? When someone passes away, their bank accounts are frozen. You can't access the money. I heard if you don't inform the bank, it'll be fine.
At Grace's comment, I couldn't help but smirk. Seeing my reaction, my husband panicked.
You didn't tell the bank, did you?
Of course I did.
You told me to handle all the funeral matters, so I took the liberty to inform them as well. So, what do we do now? Or were you planning on covering it all? I wanted to say goodbye to Mason properly, which is why I had myself brought here. But since I didn't want to be around all of you, I stayed hidden.
I then pulled out a bank book and showed it to them. The bank book I was holding was given to me by Mason just a bit before he passed away. Mason had apologized for the past rudeness of his family and told me, since they'll probably have you handle all the funeral arrangements, please use this bank book to pay for the funeral expenses. He handed me a bank book with $300,000 in it. That's why I had consulted with the funeral director to ensure the costs would be kept within $300,000.
But surely you can't withdraw that money.
They argued.
Actually, I can.
I responded confidently.
This account was set up with me as a pre-designated agent. In today's aging society, some banks offer a service where a person other than the account holder, if previously assigned, can withdraw funds. Mason was always so thoughtful, planning even for times he wouldn't be here. I said, "Hand over that bank book."
They demanded.
I won't. Mason gave clear instructions. If you ever treated me so poorly, I was to take this money as a settlement and divorce.
Mason once shared with me, I married into the family, just like you, Austin. I truly understand how you feel. He was brought into Sue's home, who was an only daughter, in order to keep the family legacy. Although the previous generation had squandered most of the family wealth, leaving only the house they lived in, Sue and the relatives would often look down on him and say, "You, as the son-in-law, should just stay quiet." That's why Mason always cared for me. When he gave me the bank book, even knowing he didn't have much time left, he was more concerned about my well-being than his own.
But that's Mason's inheritance, right? Daughters-in-law don't have any rights to inherit.
Someone retorted.
Don't worry. He had left a will with a lawyer, and he told me it's clearly stated in there.
I responded. The trio, unaware of my conversations with Mason, were stunned to learn about the existence of a will.
Well, the funeral is done, so I'll take my leave. Just a heads up, Sue apparently spent most of Mason's savings. There's hardly anything left.
What? Seeing my husband on the verge of collapsing, I decided to twist the knife a bit further.
I'm going to divorce you and sue for compensation in the divorce court for the way your family has treated me. If you refuse the divorce, be prepared, I'm willing to go to court. As I turned on my heel to leave, the voices of the three of them echoed behind me, calling out in desperation. Don't say that! Austin, please wait! Austin, I'm so sorry! Please come back! Please don't leave!
I retorted. No way.
Even if it comes down to $300,000, how are you going to pay it?
To cover the $800,000 funeral cost, the family had to sell their home, their sole inheritance. But since it was located in a remote countryside, they struggled to find a buyer. When they finally managed to sell it, the proceeds barely covered their debts, leaving them with nothing. With nowhere left to go, Sue and Grace, having lost their home, reluctantly moved in with my husband. However, living in a cramped two-bedroom apartment, he complained constantly, and my husband even emailed me about the daily struggles. After receiving dozens of emails from him begging let's start over, I reached out to my trusted attorney and ensured there would be no further contact. I finally freed myself from the burdensome in-laws and my spineless husband who was constantly swayed by Sue and Grace. Now, I'm genuinely happy. Reconnecting with the funeral home's president during Mason's funeral arrangements led him to offer me a position, saying, "Would you like to come back?" I began working there again. Having been on the sending side during Mason's funeral, I believe I now understand the feelings of the grieving family better than in my younger, more passionate days. I'm hopeful that I can now offer funeral services that genuinely support and empathize with the bereaved families. You're no longer needed. We're getting a divorce. As soon as $200,000 of severance pay came through, my husband William suddenly brought up divorce. Understood. Let's get a divorce. What? After that, I was determined to make my husband's life a living hell. I, Olivia, am 67 years old. My late dad ran a company, and I was brought up without want as the daughter of a president from a young age. At that time, not as many people went to college, and I was no exception, going to a junior college. After graduating from junior college, Dad brought up the topic of marriage. The partner was the son of the then executive vice president of Dad's company, William, who was 2 years younger than me. I had never considered marriage, but out of respect for Dad, I agreed to at least meet William. The William the first met for the first time on the day of the meeting was a fine young man with a kind smile inherited from the executive vice president. William was still only 20 years old at the time. However, his stories of working at a local company after high school graduation were very exciting to me, who only knew student life. He knew so much more than me, and William seemed reliable and shining. Thus, within half a year from the marriage talks I was initially not keen on, we smoothly got married. Shortly thereafter, William switched jobs to Dad's company, and though he struggled with the change in job type, he worked hard. Our 3 children, now adults, have each started their own families and live independently. With the children having left the nest, our house felt suddenly spacious, and I was enjoying living just with William again after a long time. Now, with Dad gone and the company entrusted to reliable people, William, who had worked there for 45 years thanks to Dad, was finally facing mandatory retirement this year. Thanks to his long service, once the severance pay is out, we had planned to go on a trip to a hot spring or something. And on William's last day of work, I was busy preparing to celebrate grandly with our children invited. Wow, Mom, you really went all out with the cooking. Dad's retiring, huh? Gotta find a hobby so he doesn't get old and bored. Grandpa's going to have every day off now? That's nice. Our eldest daughter even brought her children, making it a lively wait for William's return. However, the guest of honor didn't come back, no matter how late it got. As it got late and we couldn't reach him, we decided to disband for the night, calming the worried children by suggesting he might be celebrating with his coworkers. I felt bad for the sons who drove here after work, but I sent them off with the prepared food as souvenirs, saying, "Let's celebrate together again properly another time." Alone at home, I stared at the phone for ages, but still no contact. I continued to wait in the living room for William's return, but he didn't come home even by morning. Messages of concern kept coming from the children. With the situation unchanged, I gave up replying to those messages and tried calling William again. The phone rang a long time. Could it really be something? Thinking this, I made the fourth call, and finally, the phone connected. Olivia, you're really persistent. The voice on the other end of the phone was William's, sounding slightly annoyed.
Hello? That's good, everyone's worried. Where are you?
I told him about trying to celebrate his retirement yesterday with the children gathered and how we were worried because we couldn't contact him. Without even a murmur to indicate he was listening, I couldn't help but ask his whereabouts again.
So, where are you?
You wouldn't know.
I've retired from my job now, and I've decided to live freely, so I rented a new place. What? You rented a place?
William's unexpected words made me ask again. Then, William started laughing over the phone.
I'll tell you now, why do you think I married you? To get into your dad's company and take the good parts, obviously. Though it was unexpected for me that your dad didn't give me the president's seat but to someone else. Despite all the effort I put in to please him, that's rough.
After 45 years of marriage, the true nature of the man I had been with was so vile. I felt dizzy. Angered at how he belittled Dad, I opened my mouth to say something. But cutting me off, William continued smugly.
Well, me, who didn't go to college and joined a small company, managed to climb up to executive vice president by marrying you. I did well. You and your dad have served me well. To think you always thought that way. You're the worst.
Driven by frustration and disbelief, I found myself uttering disparaging words to William for the first time in our marriage. Words I had never allowed myself to say no matter how angry I was with him. Yet William seemed utterly unconcerned by my words.
The worse, the better. I'm in a good mood now, with a new place without you and $200,000 of severance pay in hand.
Then, with an exaggerated cough, he stated clearly.
Meaning, you're no longer needed. We're getting a divorce.
I could just imagine William's smug face as he said this over the phone. It would be a lie to say I wasn't furious. However, now that he had brought up divorce, I was only too happy to agree, as if fortune had finally turned my way.
Understood. Let's get a divorce.
What? My response seemed to surprise him as he asked again in a strange voice.
Divorce is fine. Should I send the divorce papers, or will you come back to sign them?
William seemed taken aback by my calm response, but quickly regained his bravado.
I don't ever want to see your face again. I'll give you the address, so send them.
I replied to William's spiteful comment and noted down the address. Indeed, it was in a completely different area, neither his hometown nor where we lived. He had apparently rented a house on entirely new ground. Later, I sent the divorce papers with my signature to William's new house. A few days later, a notification that the divorce papers had been processed arrived at our home. Knowing the divorce was finalized brought a certain relief to my chest. Then, as if timed, a call came.
Hello?
As expected, it was my now ex-husband, William, on the line.
Did you get the notification too? Now that we're officially strangers, I thought we should settle the financial matters properly. All I ever received was a set amount for living expenses. You were the one managing everything.
There were no valuables like debit cards left at the house. William must have everything by now. I wondered if a divorce like this meant splitting everything in half, as I organized my thoughts.
I'm aware of that,
William prefaced.
The mortgage on the house is paid off, and since you're living there, you can have it. There won't be any other distribution of property, so do whatever you want with the house. No distribution of property? What about the savings and the severance pay? There are no savings, that's why I'm giving you the house. Be grateful.
Whether there truly were no savings, I didn't know, but this way, William had managed to abscond with the entire $200,000 of his severance pay. 2.5 years after these events, I continued to live quietly in the house I was given, avoiding any contact with my ex-husband. My children, upon hearing the details of the divorce, were furious, suggesting I confront Dad or consult a lawyer. But I thanked them and insisted I wanted to live quietly now. It took quite an effort to calm their anger, but recently, my ex-husband is no longer a topic of conversation. And today, my phone has been ringing off the hook since morning. Even without answering, I knew it must be William. Because, after 2.5 years post-divorce, I had finally begun my revenge on William. He must be growing increasingly irritated by now. I decided to finally pick up the phone as the calls started coming in more frequently.
Did it finally reach you? Sorry to keep you waiting.
Immediately after confirming the caller, I delivered the line I had been holding onto for so long.
I'm claiming compensation for infidelity during our marriage.
Indeed, William had been having an affair with a subordinate at his company just before his retirement. I had learned of this and immediately began gathering evidence, planning to divorce after his retirement. However, conveniently for him, William hid his affair and initiated the divorce, leaving behind an old house while taking all the severance pay. While the divorce itself was somewhat expected, I was determined to make him pay for his selfish and cowardly actions until the very end. Now, being able to claim compensation from both him and his affair partner, I felt an inappropriate thrill that the start had finally begun. William, on the other end of the phone.
It's been over 2 years since we divorced. There's no way you can claim compensation.
Sounded irritated. However, I had already consulted a lawyer and sent a certified letter to both of them. Compensation for infidelity can be claimed within 3 years of becoming aware of the fact. I explained this to him carefully and in detail. William and his affair partner, confident they had managed to hide their secret or perhaps complacent about the impending divorce, had inadvertently provided ample evidence in a short period when investigated. Thus, because the investigation period was short, even 2.5 years after the divorce, there was still ample time to claim compensation. I had been waiting for this moment. The claim was for $60,000 each from both of them, citing repeated infidelity despite having 3 children with me and the other woman knowing William was married.
I got the claim, so discuss it with your wife and contact my lawyer next time, not me. I'm not paying for something that happened so long ago.
I ignored William's ranting and hung up the phone. Since then, I had set William's number and unknown numbers to silent, but one day, William suddenly showed up at my house. I happened upon him standing dumbfounded in front of the entrance as I returned from shopping. Seeing me, William looked from the house to me and was taken aback.
Did you rebuild this place?
He seemed surprised by the newly renovated look of our house.
What does it matter to you now?
I said, ignoring him and trying to enter the house. Then, William raised his voice. As if remembering something.
I'm not going to pay any compensation, just so you know.
He began to make a scene in front of the entrance. Concerned about the neighbor's eyes, I reluctantly let him in.
Let's talk inside.
Once inside, William rudely looked around the room. To interrupt his unpleasant gaze, I spoke up.
It's been renovated nicely, right? I had a full remodel done right after you left. Huh? Where did you get the money? There's no way a housewife like you could afford such an amount.
William instantly flew into a rage, demanding to know where the money came from. His quick temper hadn't changed since we were married. Feeling no need to hide it, I honestly told him that I had long been the owner of real estate passed down from Dad. Then, William's demeanor changed, demanding his share.
If you had that income during our marriage, it should be part of the property distribution. I'll calculate and claim half of it. Actually, since you hid it from me, I'll add a 20% delinquency charge.
I was appalled by his greed, but explained patiently.
Look, you can only claim distribution of property within 2 years after a divorce. That right has long expired. You can rant all you want, but legally, you can't claim it, and I'm not obligated to comply.
Hearing this, William slammed the table and stood up. Then snorted and spoke with a face as if he was convinced of victory.
Keep talking. I have my plans too.
And so, he left without further discussion about the compensation. Later, William came for a discussion with his new wife, the former affair partner, and a lawyer. His plan, it seemed, was to employ professional help as I had. However, as expected, he was advised that a property distribution claim was no longer possible, so they decided to negotiate reducing the compensation for the affair.
Don't think everything will go your way. I'm not paying you anything.
In truth, William was trying to get out of paying altogether, but after both lawyers painstakingly explained the validity of the compensation, even his own lawyer admitted that avoiding payment was impossible given the evidence. Frustrated that his lawyer also agreed payment was unavoidable, William and his affair partner changed lawyers, only to receive the same advice. After prolonged discussions, William's side finally proposed to reduce the compensation. I accepted the offer, knowing that I had initially inflated the claim amount, anticipating a reduction. The settled amount didn't meet my original claim, but I had always earned more than William even before retirement. And my finances were stable, so the reduction didn't bother me. Moreover, I had been periodically checking on the two of them after the divorce, and this claim was timed and calculated based on their situation. Investigating their lives was easy with the address obtained during the divorce filing, allowing a detective to quickly gather information. Knowing they had likely spent the severance pay and were saving for a car through their jobs, I compromised on an amount that would just require them to hand over their savings. William accused me of being wicked, but I was determined to bring him and his affair partner down for my dad, myself, and my life. Thus, I was satisfied with the outcome, securing my finances at an opportune time. Later, William and his partner had to pay a significant amount in compensation, though reduced. My estimate might have been off, or they truly had nothing left, as their savings for a car weren't enough. They moved to a cheaper apartment and continued to make payments while bickering. Watching them fall into despair, I might indeed be malicious, as I felt utterly liberated. Having sold the renovated house, I now live in a high-rise condo closer to my children's homes, enjoying every day to the fullest.
Here is your dinner, Abigail.
Nan, my MIL, laughed as she placed a broth without any ingredients in front of me. While my husband and in-laws were enjoying a luxurious steak, this was all I got. Next to me, stunned by Nan's treatment, my husband was rolling on the floor laughing. But today, I had made a certain resolution. My name is Abigail. I'm 27 years old. My mom passed away due to illness when I was in middle school, and since then, my dad raised me alone. Dad owns a small business in the manufacturing sector, and I help out with his work on a part-time basis. I have a husband named Daniel, who is 3 years older than me. Daniel is a salesman for one of my dad's clients. We hit it off immediately after meeting and gradually progressed in our relationship, getting married last year. The wedding was a small affair, attended only by close family and friends, but it was very much in line with what we wanted. Currently, we live in an apartment within walking distance from my childhood home. We had been building a good relationship with my in-laws, who live an hour and a half away by bus, but since getting married, they have gradually started to look down on my dad and me. Abigail's dad's company wouldn't survive without Daniel. I wish you'd show more gratitude to Daniel. They'd calmly say such outrageous things to me. How many times have they told me that my dad's business only exists because Daniel's company does business with us, and that I should be more grateful to Daniel? Initially, I kept this from my dad, but one day, I ended up complaining in front of him and he found out. Dad told me to get a divorce, but the truth was, without Daniel's company, my dad's business would face severe difficulties, so I chose to endure for my dad's sake. At first, Daniel protected me from his parents' verbal abuse. "Don't worry about it," telling me. However, after constantly being told by the in-laws that Daniel is above Abigail since he married her, he unconsciously started to take a superior stance over me. And gradually, he became more arrogant, now often making snide remarks and acting haughtily. The kind Daniel I met at the beginning is gone. Amidst all this, we decided to visit the in-laws' house for the upcoming long weekend. When we arrived at the in-laws' house by train, they welcomed us at the entrance, but Daniel. "Welcome. We've been waiting for you." "Ah, Daniel. Good to see you. You must be tired." I knew it, but the in-laws welcomed only my husband, treating me as if I didn't exist. "I'm here too. Thanks for having us today." I managed the customary greeting, but the in-laws only talked to my husband, ignoring me. Still, I was about to start preparing dinner as always ordered, when Nan spoke to me. "Ah, no need to prepare anything today. I ordered some luxurious steaks for dinner." "Oh? Is that so? Thank you." It seems Nan had ordered steaks for delivery, so I moved from the kitchen to the living room. "High-quality steak, it's been a while." Daniel seemed to be in a good mood, relaxing. As I was thinking it was about dinner time, the doorbell rang, and Nan went to receive the delivery. She started placing the steaks on the table, but to my shock, there were only 3 servings. Luxurious steaks were placed in front of Fael John, my husband, and Nan. What about my portion? "Abigail's dinner is this." "Eh?" What Nan placed in front of me was a soup without any ingredients. "It's from yesterday. We ate all the ingredients yesterday, so it's just the broth." Nan laughed loudly. John and my husband also burst into laughter. What's so funny, my husband was laughing so hard he was having trouble breathing. Silent, I was stunned as Nan, laughing condescendingly, uttered unbelievable words. "Your poor bottom-of-the-barrel company should just shut down already. This ingredient-less soup is enough for a poor person like you." Nan's ugly laughing face. To that, "This is the last time I'll be meeting with you, so I don't care," I said. "What do you mean?" Ignoring the surprised Nan, I took out a certain document from my bag and thrust it towards Daniel. "What's this?" "Divorce papers." "I've already signed, so can you just sign them quickly?" Caught off guard by my actions, Daniel stared at the divorce papers for a few seconds before. "Why all of a sudden?" "It's true that Dad's company isn't doing well. Don't get mad." He tried to reason with me. Continuing, "You usually don't talk back no matter what's said. What's gotten into you today?" he asked. "I'm tired of putting up with it." "You don't need a poor man's wife either, do you?" I coldly informed him. "Huh? What are you talking about?" My husband showed a puzzled look. To such a husband, the in-laws chimed in. That's right. No need for a poor man's wife. Just get a divorce," they incited. Daniel hesitated for a while, but, under the pressure of the in-laws' momentum, signed the divorce papers. I took the divorce papers and silently left the in-laws' house. I went straight to the office to submit the divorce papers, and with that, my divorce from Daniel was officially finalized. Feeling relieved, I returned home, took the luggage I had packed in advance, and went back to my parents' house. In fact, I had been considering divorce for a while, which is why I had packed my bags. Daniel had no idea I was preparing to leave. He had been indifferent to me lately and probably never dreamed that I was considering divorce. Back at my parents' house, I told Dad about what happened at the in-laws' house and reported that I had divorced Daniel. Dad offered me words of consolation and told me I could stay at home as long as I wanted. The next morning, Daniel, who had returned from the in-laws' house, called me several times, but I ignored all of them. Daniel came to Dad's company as part of his rounds, but Dad, knowing the whole situation, was furious and tried to send Daniel away. Angered by Dad's attitude, Daniel yelled,
"Then the deal is off!"
and broke the contract and left. Dad and I blocked Daniel and his parents' phone numbers and handled all matters related to the distribution of property after the divorce through a lawyer. I never wanted to see Daniel or the in-laws again. The lawyer was competent and handled the proceedings efficiently, which was a great help. After a while, the lawyer contacted me to say that Daniel had come up with something outrageous. He said he would consider reconciling if I apologized. What a joke. He doesn't seem to realize he's the one who got divorced. I absolutely refused to reconcile. Of course, I decided to ignore it. Then, Daniel started hinting at reviving the business dealings with Dad's company as a condition for reconciliation. If you reconcile, I'll revive the dealings with Dad's company. Daniel seemed to think I would agree to reconcile immediately if he hinted at reviving Dad's company's dealings, but Dad and I ignored this as well. As Dad and I didn't agree no matter how long it took, Daniel came to Dad's company to talk directly. However, he was stunned upon seeing the sign.
"Eh? What's with this sign?"
Instead of Dad's company's sign, it had changed to a web design company's sign. Dad had been considering closing down the company due to financial difficulties. After many discussions and consultations between Dad and me, Dad decided to close the business and use the store as my new business office. In fact, my main profession is a web designer. Working at Dad's store was just helping out. That's why I worked there part-time, not as a full-time employee. While working as a web designer, I also helped with Dad's company's work all along. Since Dad closed the company, naturally, there was no need for dealings with Daniel's company. There's no need to request business dealings anew as my work has nothing to do with Daniel's company.
"Hey! Abigail, you're there, right? Why has the sign changed? What happened to your dad's company?"
Daniel was yelling in front of my company's sign.
"Come out, Abigail!"
Initially, I ignored him, but he kept shouting and wouldn't leave. To avoid causing a nuisance to the neighbors, I reluctantly showed myself. "Keep it down. Please go home."
"Finally, you come out. Explain. What happened to Dad's company?"
Daniel demanded an explanation. "It's obvious, isn't it? Dad's company closed down. The store is being used as my web design office now." When I explained, Daniel scoffed as if mocking me. "Huh? Being a web designer is such an unstable job. It's going to be tough going forward. I'll reconcile and take care of you. How much more is this man going to belittle me?"
"What are you talking about?"
"I refuse." When I naturally refused,
"Why not?"
Daniel got furious and started causing a scene again. Fed up with Daniel's bizarre tantrum, I finally called the police. Soon after, the police arrived and escorted Daniel out. Until the end.
"Hey, you'll regret not reconciling with me." I'm saying I'll reconcile, so just accept it.
Daniel was shouting. Why is he so obsessed with reconciling? There's no point in reconciling with a wife he mocked for being poor now that he's gotten a divorce. Feeling the oddity of Daniel's actions, I immediately set out to investigate why he was so insistent on reconciling. Then, a shocking truth was revealed. Daniel had been fired from his company. In fact, Dad had built such a good relationship with the president of Daniel's company, based on past achievements, that he was considered a go-to person in times of trouble. Therefore, when Daniel and I got married, the president and others were pleased, but they were furious when they found out Daniel had unilaterally terminated the contract with Dad's company due to his own divorce drama. Unable to take responsibility, Daniel was fired and was trying to get rehired by remarrying me to mediate between Dad and the company. So that's why he was demanding reconciliation so insistently. I was dumbfounded. Upon learning this, Dad and I immediately reported Daniel's nuisance behavior to his company. We made sure Daniel was warned not to come near me and Dad again. This made Daniel's reemployment hopeless.
Am I really never going back to the company, unemployed, me?
Proud Daniel couldn't accept reality and seemed to have been living a reclusive life for a while. Eventually, as his savings began to run out, Daniel found it difficult to continue paying the rent for the apartment we used to live in by himself and fled back to his parents' house. Poor Daniel. Forget about such an ungrateful wife. You can stay here as long as you like. Daniel's parents welcomed him back home and seemed to accept him. They are apparently doting on Daniel and taking care of him. My new business, having secured a dedicated workspace in the form of a storefront, is off to a smooth start with increased efficiency. Having a physical store seems to offer a sense of security, allowing me to connect with people and local shops I hadn't been involved with before. Word of mouth is gradually increasing my customer base, and I'm enjoying my work every day. Dad is still young, so he looked for a new job and was hired by a factory that was a business partner of the company Daniel used to work for, based on his track record. The factory is large, with many people working there. Friendly and competent, Dad quickly became well acquainted with his colleagues and seems to enjoy working in a large group. I make sandwiches for Dad every day, and one time when Dad forgot his sandwich, I delivered it and was happy to see Dad working lively and smiling. Everyone working in the factory seems nice. They respect each other, sharing their skills, knowledge, and experience generously to achieve better results. Inspired by Dad, I vowed to work hard at my job too. Meanwhile, after returning to his parents' house, Daniel attempted to find a job but seemed to fail at every turn and ended up feeling defeated. Daniel's parents consoled him.
How pitiful. The companies that don't hire Daniel just don't see his worth. Yeah, exactly. It's like everyone's just messing around. I'm offering to work, and they dare not hire me. Daniel isn't at fault. Take your time looking for a job.
Even after that, Daniel took several employment exams but failed miserably. Despite having an average education and work history, he couldn't even pass the document screening because he was aiming too high. Stressed from unsuccessful job hunting, Daniel started frequenting slot machines and eventually ended up in debt. Every day, unemployed Daniel lazed around at home, not helping with housework and going to slot machines. Initially, Daniel's parents spoiled him endlessly, but they eventually ran out of patience with his lack of initiative to work and constant slot machine visits.
We can't take care of an unemployed person. Get out!
They yelled at Daniel, turning against him, but Daniel retorted,
Didn't you say I could stay as long as I liked? What's this all of a sudden? I'm not leaving.
And they seemed to argue frequently. Even when told to at least help with housework, Daniel does nothing and lazes around. He frequently orders pizza and steak for delivery with his parents' money, significantly increasing the food expenses. He would also finish all the food in the refrigerator at night. Continuing such a lifestyle, he became increasingly overweight and unhealthy. I think Daniel's parents are partly to blame for Daniel becoming like this, but they don't seem to realize it at all. They act as if they're victims of a good-for-nothing son. The neighbors talk, making their lives very uncomfortable.
That family harassed their wife until she left, and their son got fired and came back unemployed.
Sometimes, the parent-child arguments are so intense that the sound of breaking dishes can be heard. Noise complaints have led to the police being called several times, and they've been warned. Daniel's debt only grew, leading him to buy a large number of lottery tickets as a last resort, which, of course, didn't win, causing debt collectors to start showing up at his house. Finally realizing he needed to earn money, Daniel, thinking it would be easy, applied for and got a part-time job at a grocery store. However, the part-time job at the grocery store was tens of times harder than Daniel had imagined, with a wide range of tasks. Underestimating the grocery store part-time job, Daniel struggled significantly. He worked there, being scolded by student part-timers, but somehow managed to keep the job. I happened to pass by the grocery store recently and saw Daniel working there, looking nothing like his former self, filled with confidence. Now, he looked downcast, dark, overweight, and disheveled, almost like a different person. I muttered to myself that it was his responsibility, feeling refreshed. I thought I was done with love, but thanks to a friend's introduction, I recently started dating a sincere man. I introduced him to Dad, and Dad seems to like him very much. We're planning a trip together, which I'm really looking forward to. Divorcing Daniel was truly the best decision. I'm living a very fulfilling and happy life, both personally and professionally.